Hello.
Smiling Sam, what's going on, man?
Yeah, how you doing?
Good. You're rocking the shades. I like it.
Yeah, I had my eyes dilated earlier, so
Oh,
the
okay.
lights. Yeah, the lights killing me.
That's all right. What like, what'd you do with your eyes, man?
Oh, nothing. You just got to get them done for medical. So I needed blood work and a physical and all that.
Hmm.
And it's usually about every 6 months they put the drops in and they make me squint for 3 or 4 hours.
Oh, that's all right. Have you, uh,
Yeah.
have you, like, I know you got your fight on the 25th. So have you had any COVID tests yet, or are they just doing that like the week of?
Probably just the week of. I think it's a 12-day thing. Um, yeah, I get out there on the 12th. They quarantine me in Vegas for 2 days, and then I fly over to Dubai, and then they quarantine me there for 2 days, and then I'm free to move around the UFC facility, and then I fight, and then they fly me home later that day, and then they quarantine me again in Vegas for a day. So I'm sure I'm going to have stuff up my nose just constantly for about, a week and a half.
Yeah. That's the only thing I feel bad for the fighters is that it's bad enough you're cutting weight, and then you got people shoving shit up your nose for the 3 or 4 days before your fight even goes on. So it's a bit of a sacrifice, but what can you do?
Yeah, it's either that or don't fight, and I would much rather. You can do whatever you want to me. Just let me fight.
Yeah, there you go. But yes, I mean, obviously, I know you got your fight on the 25th. But besides that, what have you been up to? Just training, still training? What are you?
Yeah, just training a lot. Yeah, really just training a lot. Having a good time with that. I still coach and all that at the gym.
Hmm?
I've got 5 kids at home, so I'm always busy there too as well. But yeah, just enjoying life, going day to day.
That's good, man. And so you're training still at Team Quest, right?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Okay. So you're like, I think you'd be training with like Jesse Taylor or some of those guys.
No, Jesse's been gone for years. He always says, "Yeah, I'll come up, bro, tomorrow," and I haven't seen him. But no, Dom Reyes, he trains with me. Joe Stevenson, Dan Henderson, Pogus,
Oh,
Jared Bandera, Ashley Yoder, Tom Galicchio, Tarek Safadine. So we've got a real extensive crew of guys there to
yeah.
beat me up.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said Dominic Reyes is training there now?
Yeah. Oh, he comes once or twice a week. He'll spar out by us, and he'll drill with us on Wednesdays, and
Okay.
then he's out by Joe Stevenson's gym, Cobra Kai, most of the time.
Yeah. But obviously, I'm sure he's not there now. He's in Dubai now.
Yeah, he's overseas right now, but
But yeah, that's pretty cool, man. So have you been able to help him prepare for the fight on Saturday, or?
yeah, he and I, we've done a lot of work together, especially his last 2 fights. I think that's the reason he beat Jon Jones the first time, is because he trained with me so much.
Oh, you're
Uh,
now, yeah.
so I fully expect him to come home with that belt around his waist.
Well, and talking about that fight, I think you, me, and everyone and their brother knows that he won that fight. Me being a podcaster, separate myself from being a podcaster, and a fan, as a fan perspective, he totally won that fight. As a podcaster, I'd rather keep my views back, but as a fan, I think he won that fight at least
Yeah.
4-1. 4-1.
I, I I thought it was such a dominant performance. He slowed down a little bit in 4 and 5, but
Mm-hmm.
1 through 3 it was dominance.
Oh, absolutely. And it's, I guess, the whole idea, they say don't leave it to the judges, but I think there is a bit of a thing called champion luck, I think. Uh, I think in any fight, you kind of, if you want to beat Jon Jones, you kind of have to be the kind of guy that has to knock him out, because there's no, I think he's lost his last couple fights, and I wonder if that's why he's going over to heavyweight. I do have my speculation.
Huge mistake for him. Actually, I don't care one way or another where he goes, but I think he's going to get just knocked out by everyone at heavyweight.
Yeah, you think so?
Yeah, Jon Jones, his biggest advantage is he's got 84 inches of reach. He's just got the longest arms of anyone in the UFC. Anytime you put him against someone with a long reach, like Dom Reyes or Gustafsson or someone like that, they hit him. They touch him. Just none of those guys hit as hard as the heavyweights. You put him up against Nogano freaking kill anyone. But you put him up against, I think he loses to my balls is hot. I think he loses to him. I think these guys aren't going to react to the way he's used to people reacting.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to get hit and hit hard.
Well, and it's interesting you bring that up because like he's had the luxury of fighting guys like Daniel Cormier, who no doubt Daniel Cormier, love the guy, but you look at him versus Jon Jones. John's got so much in his arsenal to with his elbows, his kicks, his his high kicks. I mean, he had everything on a guy like Cormier.
The PEDs, my man. They'll beat anyone.
well, PEDs, yeah. As much as they said that, it's he had a little bit of I think like a grain of salt in his blood. I have a hard time believing that you just found that in your system and that's it. He's been convicted before, so
yeah, I think he's at 3 strikes now of popping. One was picograms, so that one doesn't count. All of his fans say, "Well, okay, what about the other 2?" So now those don't count either. Those are in the past. It didn't affect his fights. Hey, it's fun. I love picking on Jon Jones on Instagram because I always get 10,000 hate tweets back or hate messages back. Saying, "Oh, and there's nobody wants to admit to it. He cheated. He's great. He is, but he's as great as he is because he cheated."
I kind of wanted your thoughts on that about having the superstars in the sport and how they get penalized. So, looking at a guy like Jon Jones, the things that he's gone through versus a guy that maybe is not on the same level and would he get treated just as fairly? Would it just be like a couple strikes and you're out of the UFC or you're out of the sport? Or, what I mean? Like, it kind of seems like because he's the superstar, they will do whatever they can to protect him.
I'm sure there is some of that. And if you're going to protect someone, it's going to cost you money. And at the end of the day, it's a business and it wants to make money. It doesn't want to lose a lot of money. Jesse Taylor is a good example of that. He won the Ultimate Fighter.
Yeah.
He then popped, I don't know, 2 months later out of competition. He was, suspended for a year, and at the end of the year, he was fired. It could have cost the UFC way more money to make sure he stayed in the UFC. More money than Jesse Taylor would have made the UFC. So with someone like Jones, of course they've got to work with USADA. They've got to work with him. They've got to put him in rehab. They've got to do stuff as they should. He's the cash cow. Conor McGregor's another one. He's punching old dudes or hitting on women or doing whatever he's doing, but he's the biggest draw the UFC has. So they've got to protect him because he's the one that's going to make the money. And at the end of the day, it's all about making that money.
Well, in talking about him, the whole thing, I mean, I guess I understand that. The only problem I really do have is the idea that they use him throwing the dolly in the bus as the I guess the lead up to the Khabib fight, and they used it in like the promos and stuff. And as much as I get what they're trying to do, I think that was disgusting because it's like, okay, it's not like where they just talked shit in the hall and they threw some punches. Like, it's not like Artem and Khabib in the hall. This was like, he threw a dolly in the bus. He could have hurt. I mean, he did.
He did hurt. Yeah, I think he took 2 people out of their fights, Rose and
Chiesa, I think.
Yeah, Chiesa was the other one, yeah.
And I think he was the one he was supposed to fight the guy from New York.
L.A. Quinta?
L.A. Quinta, yeah. And then he had to fight Khabib. So, as much as, I get that he was pissed off, but you don't throw a fucking dolly in the bus. Like.
Yeah. I'm sure. I mean, he's got so much money at this point from his boxing and from the UFC and from his sponsorships, from his own liquor and all that. He could throw a dolly at the bus if he wants to.
Yeah. Maybe next time when there's nobody in there, like.
Yeah, maybe. Just we'll film it when everyone's out of the bus.
Absolutely. But yeah, kind of getting back the focus on you here.
Yes.
Oh, you've had a bit of a long career. You fought in Bellator, MFC, and now at UFC, and you've had quite a number of fights. So, do you find that experience gives you the opportunity or the I guess advantage over the younger or upcoming guys?
I think so. I've got over 70 professional fights, all 70 fights, amateur included. But I've been a little bit everywhere. There's very few positions that I've been put in that I've never been put in before. So I do think it gives me advantage. Of course, with 70 fights, you do take your lumps and bruises, and I'm sure I've developed some bad habits or something not so great with as many fights as well. But I do feel I think the positives way outweigh the negatives. I feel that just that many fights is really paid off, and I'm a much better coach because of it. I think I'm a much better fighter because of it.
Yeah. Do you find that the bit of the longevity can be a factor in that as well, though?
Uh, I'll let you know when I'm done. I've been doing it for 12 or 14 years or something, and I only feel like I'm half done. I still feel really good. I compete with some of the best in the world. I train hard. My training has not died off yet. I know Hendo in his last few years, he did everything in the morning so he could recover for the next morning. But I get 2 to 3 hard workouts a day. I've done two already this morning. Then I'll get 1 or 1.5 tonight. We'll see how I feel. But I haven't had that fall off yet of my body giving out, which is really nice. At the end of the day, I'm going to listen to my body, and I've seen what Dan Henderson's my coach, so he's the guy I get to base everything off of. And I saw when he hit 40, it said it was harder for him. He didn't recover like he used to, so he trained accordingly. But seeing it he arguably beat Bisping again and retired the champion of the UFC.
Oh my God.
He finished on top of the world, and he did it. And I can use the way he trained as a guideline for how I need to train if I ever need to change.
Yeah. So hearing from what you're saying, so you don't believe that there's any real timeline for anybody to retire. It's how you feel and how your body feels.
Yeah, absolutely. Dan Henderson, he still beats us all up. Anderson Silva, I've never trained. I've always wanted to train with him. He's always been about my favorite fighter. But everyone says he just beats everyone up. He comes in the gym and he just tosses people around like at will. And you get some of those guys that have had the long careers that have trained and are better than everyone. And they tend to last a little longer. I think they're, the saying, some days you're the hammer, some days you're the nail. If you're the nail every day, you're going to have a shorter career. But if you're the hammer, you could go as long as you want because you're not getting hurt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's why he's been able to fight for so long. I mean, why guys like Dan Henderson was able to fight at like 46 years old. I mean, he was still knocking guys out at 45 years old. I mean,
Yeah.
Andy Couture was won the belt at like 42. I mean, so, if you're able to avoid if you're avoiding that kind of damage, I think, yeah, you definitely have that opportunity to keep on keeping on at, beyond your 40s.
Yeah.
And I mean, Daniel Cormier just retired at like 41. So, I think that, I don't think there's really any thing to say, yeah, you have to retire at 40, or when you get up there, that's when you really have to watch it. I think, yeah, whenever you feel good. I mean, Yoel Romero still looking pretty damn good. I mean,
Yeah, he's a freak, man. And Jon Jones, he doesn't take much damage. He's in fights and he gets hit, but he's not taking much damage. I'm sure he doesn't take much damage in practice either. He'll outfight all of us. He'll fight until he just doesn't want to anymore. And you get guys that are just that level of good. They're going to have longer careers. Not to say I'm that level of good, but I hope I got some good genetics at least.
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of moving on here. You got the nickname Smiling Sam. So like, how do you get that nickname in the first place? Is it just because you smile all the time? Like, what's the deal?
Yeah, well, I smile a bunch, and my name is Sam. It just fit. No, we were. I didn't know about the UFC. I never meant to be a fighter. Never meant to do any of that.
Mm-hmm.
But I enjoy doing it. Let's keep going and see where it goes. And so we were sitting down one day, and my dad, I think it was my dad that said it first. Well, we should come up with something, make you even more easy to remember. and we talked about it, and Smiling Sam came up, and we said, hey, you know what, that's got a good flow, and now it's half the people that meet me, they call me Smiley. They forget about the Sam part, so it was a good call. It works really well. The one bad thing I did is when I got the name, it was before social media and all that. I didn't have Instagram or Twitter or TikTok now. So I went Smile 'N, and I should have went Smile IN or Smile SMILIN for social media. That's how everyone spells it anyways. I think it'd be easier to find me if I didn't do the 'N.
Yeah, and yeah, so and I mean, and then you started doing you're doing the smiley face in the back of your head. I love that.
Oh, I've been doing that for almost my whole career. Yeah, that was way back in my Wisconsin days even. And now I'll get people around the world that they'll shave it in the back of their head. They'll take pictures during fight. Hey, look what my kid did. Look at this. I said, oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and I think that every fighter kind of has sometimes like a pre-fight ritual or something that kind of keeps them focused. Is that something that you've done in the past to get yourself in that fight mode, or is it just something that you like to do? What?
You know, at the end of the day, you got to do something that people remember. A good knockout, and I've got plenty of those. A good knockout helps people remember you. A good submission, I got a couple of those that helps. A smile in the back of my head, that people remember that. It's now in 3 or 4 different UFC video games. I'm the guy with the smiley face in the back of the head. It's even just something else that helps people remember me. The amateurs I coach, I try so hard. I said, listen, your fights speak volumes, but you've got to do just something else, just a little more to help people remember who you are. That you will get paid more if people remember who you are. That there are so many fighters in the world that are great fighters, superstars, but don't do that little extra, and it can affect your career.
Yeah, 100%. And I remember on social media, I don't know if you ever got to see it. I think there was a fight that you were booked with. I can't remember who it was. This maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and it was just announced that you were fighting some guy. It might have been Nogueira. I can't remember.
Okay.
And someone has suggested, they said, wouldn't it be hilarious if Sam knocked the guy out and the guy went face plant and he took a razor and shaved a smiley face in the back of his head? And just and that's what you're talking about, like the things that people will remember you for, and just having fun with the fans, I think,
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I wouldn't have a job without the fans. And I think I appreciate the fans more than most fighters. Because I know I wouldn't have a paycheck. I wouldn't have a job. I wouldn't have anything if it wasn't for the fans. The fans have showed they love the smile. I'm going to smile whether they like it or not, but they love it, which is awesome. The smiley face, people remember it. And I think I've done enough in this sport now that generations of fighters from now, people are going to remember that I fought.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will never forget when you had to fight Elias Theodoro and you trolled him so hard. You come up with the long hair at the weigh-ins and everything. I thought that was hilarious.
I made a whole YouTube series on that. And I had so much fun doing that. Every week I'd come out with another, 30 or 45-second video with the hair, and I was dancing or doing whatever. I had so much fun with that.
And I mean, the whole thing, were you trying to kind of do the whole Sean O'Connell thing? Because he typically likes to have fun at the weigh-ins, likes to do funny shit like that. Is that something that you were kind of going for?
Yeah, every weigh-in I've done, I've always tried to do something to stand out just a little bit. The hair was something. I've had when I fought in Mexico City, I had it was Del Muertes, the Day of the Dead. It happened to be the same day, so I had earlier in the week we went down to Mexico City. We found a gal who didn't speak any English, but we got a phone number and got her over to the house, and she painted me up like the skeleton. When I was in Brazil, we found another guy, and we looked the city, and they did like a Cyborg always has the Brazilian flag across her face. I got the American flag there. I've had the perfect tan on my chest. I've done all. It's anything you can do to get somebody to remember you, and I have so much fun at those weigh-ins. My last weigh-in, I brought an elevation mask, and I was about to walk out on stage, and somebody said, "No, you got to take that off." said, "Oh, come on," because I was the first fight of the new era of the coronavirus.
Mm-hmm.
So it was an old school elevation mask. It was like a full, looked like a gas mask. And that was going to be my thing. And seconds before I walked out, the UFC snatched it. I said, "Oh, I put it on too soon or too late."
And I guess, like, with that being said, so how did, like, so you were pretty much on really the first card that they brought out in the COVID era, and
Yeah.
was it a weird experience for you? How did you adjust to that?
I'd fought with no audience before.
Mm-hmm.
When I was on The Ultimate Fighter, they used to have you'd fight to get in the house, and you'd fight. And I fought in Mandalay Bay, so there's nobody watching except for Shane Carwin, Big Country, Dana White. So I had done it once before, and I think that the best way I could explain it is when you're fighting with a crowd, it's like a white noise. You hear everything, but you don't really hear individual anything. When you're in this room with nobody else, it's still like white noise. It's just a really quiet white noise.
So it doesn't really affect you then that much.
It really didn't. I much prefer having the fans because, like I said, I don't have a job without those guys. Anytime I can connect with the I'm going to try to. But as far as the fight goes, I didn't feel like it affected the fight at all.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, and a couple of fighters have told me, yeah, like some of them actually enjoy it because they can hear the other corner, but the problem is the other corner can hear their coaches as well. So there's a bit of an advantage and disadvantage to it for sure. But kind of moving on, you fought at 3 different weight classes: welterweight, middleweight, and now light heavyweight. Currently, you're still fighting at light heavyweight. Are you?
Yeah,
So
light heavyweight.
yeah. So are you planning on going back down to not welterweight, not welterweight, but middleweight by any
Yeah,
means?
I'll never go back down to welterweight. That was rough. But middleweight, completely willing to go to middleweight. I only went to 205 because the UFC said they didn't have an opponent for me at middleweight at the time. I said, well, if it helps me get an opponent, I'll fight 205. And they said, okay, we got this guy, big Polish fella. I said, all right, let's do it. So I went up to 205 and I won the first 2. And I said, oh my God, I should have done this years ago. And now I'm on a friggin' skid. So I'm going to go out. I'm going to win this one. And then I might still go back down to 85. I like being the bigger fighter. I was a big 85er.
Yeah.
I am a middle of the road, size-wise 205er. So I might still go back down to middleweight.
Okay. And I mean, fighting at middleweight versus light heavyweight, would you prefer to fight middleweight? I mean, because there's a totally big difference between getting hit by someone at middleweight and then light heavyweight.
I don't know if I've noticed any real difference. But then again, I've been cracked twice pretty hard in the last 4 fights. They're a little slower at light heavyweight, and the division as a whole is not nearly as talented as the 185 division is. I think 205 is a much easier path to the title than 185 is. But again, I'm small at 205, and I don't like being the smaller opponent.
Okay. And do you find that's why some guys cut a lot of weight, is to kind of get that size advantage?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a great idea. Cut a bunch of weight, be bigger than the guy. I like having the size advantage. I like being the bigger fighter. And it's more than liking being the bigger fighter. I don't like being the smaller fighter.
Yeah, no, I can imagine why, obviously. Yeah, and that's why I watch these fights and I see some guys that don't make the weight but still come to the fight and they just have a terrible performance, and it's like, well, the terrible weight cut, and like I remember seeing, like, I mean, guys like Connor, he's probably walking around, I think he's about 168 around there, and he's cutting to like 145, and I never could, at the time, being an amateur fan, like being a casual fan, I'm like, what the hell is this guy doing cutting to 145? And then after learning about the sport and actually training in the sport, I understood the idea about the weight cutting and an advantage. So, yeah, as a fan, I never could understand that. And now it's, makes all sense now.
And if you look at Connor at 55, he looks great. At 45, he looks big at 45. And at 70, he looks small. He's not a big 70er, but at the end of the day, he doesn't have to cut weight if he doesn't want to.
Absolutely. And so kind of moving on here. So you said that you're on a four fight skid. But what are you planning on doing to be successful against Jung? I think his last name is at UFC 254.
I gotta quit letting fights go to the decision. The judges screw me. I'm not a fight style that is judge friendly. So I gotta, if I'm up 2 rounds going into the third, I gotta fight the third like I'm down 2 rounds. I gotta fight from beginning to end to finish the fight. Because I don't have a good style for judging. I'm kind of that laid back and counter-strike kind of guy. I'm going to land all the big shots. I'm going to land the biggest shots. I'm going to control what I want to control and take very little damage doing it. But judges don't like the laid back guy. They don't judge. They'll judge, number of strikes over power of strikes. I hate that. I hate the significant strikes that the UFC always posts because the UFC has no idea what a significant strike is. And so it's like, I number of strikes landed. That's okay. You can judge on that, but significant strikes. If it was that significant, they would have fallen over. So I gotta dedicate myself to 15 minutes of trying to kill the guy.
Well, and you know what? When you bring up the whole idea about getting kind of a bullshit decision, and obviously you fought at one of the Jacksonville cards when they first started opening up and everything, and I gotta tell you, the judging was disgusting. Like I've never seen. It was probably one of the worst judging I've ever seen. And I mean, props. I mean, I know judges. It's not easy to judge a fight. Like, hey, okay, that guy won. I mean, you have to really see what's going on. But I mean, I don't know if the judges were on crack on those 3 events, but holy shit. Like, I mean, it wasn't just, I mean, you look at like the Angela Hill fight. I mean, there was no way that she lost that fight.
You know what I think it is? So my fight with Ryan Spann, I think I won. 2 of the judges didn't. It's fine. It was a good fight. Whether I won or lost, it was a great fight, I thought. Right. But the whole time I was fighting, I heard Joe Rogan, Daniel Cormier, and was it the third one? There might have been a third one, Anik, I think. I could hear everything they're saying. So when, if you remember the fight started off, I was getting the head and arm choked standing.
Yeah.
I could breathe fine. At no point was my breathing cut off. I was fine. I was stuck there, but it wasn't affecting any part of it. But I could hear those guys saying, "Oh my God, Sam Alvey, he's gonna fall asleep. He's getting choked and blah 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 blah." And I wasn't. It's like, oh, shit, I'm fine. So you see it that the ref is getting closer, and I hear John, "Oh, he's gonna go." So I smile at the ref, say, "Yeah, I'm fine." And then the ref backs off, and I get out. It's all good. But all those, if I heard it and I'm getting choked or attempted to be choked, all 3 of the judges hear Joe Rogan say how close to being asleep I am. And so I think that greatly, especially in the early ones, when the judges have never heard Joe Rogan talking before, or Daniel Cormier talking, or any of those guys, they don't hear it because of the crowd. Hear this, the first 3 events that people heard, or that the judges heard the commentators. And I think the commentators swayed some events or some fights. When Cowboy, we were up in the room later that night, Cowboy fought Pettis. Yeah. Me, Hendo, our whole room, we thought it was a close fight, but we thought Cowboy won. And then turned out Pettis won. We weren't upset. It was a good fight. But the commentating was very much on Pettis' corner that fight. Or Pettis' side. Everything was coming up Pettis. And so that was something we started thinking about afterwards.
Yeah, and I think that's a problem too, is not only are you getting judges that might hear that kind of shit, but I've talked with numerous fighters about the idea of having judges being replaced by either current or former fighters, or guys that just retired, or guys that have been in sport for a long time that actually could see and know what fighters are doing, and aren't going to be swayed by a biased statement, for example, whether they're hearing the commentary or not. I mean, God, I love Joe Rogan, but you can't always know what's actually going on based upon what you're seeing. It's all subjective. I mean, you don't really know unless you're actually in the cage. But I mean, the whole idea about having judges replaced, I think it should be former fighters that know what they're doing, whether they're specialized in BJJ and they can see what's going on the ground. I think that there has to be changes to the judging, because it's some of the I think some of the decisions have just been disgusting, especially in those 3 Jacksonville cards. It was terrible.
Yeah, I think that I would love to see how that works. I've heard the talk about calling the score out between rounds. I've heard that. I would like that one. I'm interested in. I don't know if it'll affect anything or what'll happen, but I look forward to. I think Invicta's done it a couple times.
Oh, really?
Between rounds they say how they scored it. And another option, I think these judges should be fired. Should be allowed to be fired if they're shitty judges. If you're always on the wrong side of a split decision, or just a lot of the time on the wrong side of a split decision, you should be fired. Don't be allowed to referee again until you go and figure out how to be a good one. And I think these refs, they've got such good jobs. I'll call it such easy jobs. Once a week, you have to sit in a chair for 5 hours and watch fights. It's not that difficult, and they're getting comfortable. They're getting comfortable at not being that good at their job.
Well, and that's it. If you're doing a job for a long time and you're not getting the criticism, you're not getting that backlash, or you're not getting those warnings, you have nothing to worry about. You don't have that. You don't have that fear to, pull up your socks, and and if you're not getting those kind of hints or cues, what's to stop a ref from, or not ref, but a judge from making bad calls?
No, absolutely. And the mob on Twitter, they make fun of a lot of refs, but I don't think that counts.
Yeah, absolutely. But kind of so kind of moving on. So obviously with your fight on October 25th, I would never ask a fighter to give it their game plan, obviously. But how do you see the fight going? Like, what are you hoping to what are your are you doing anything to train differently for this fight?
I'm a lot of mental stuff. So I'm watching every fight he's ever done. I've watched when he lost, when he wins, when he does well, what he's not done well, and I watch it every day. I think I'm more aware of how good he is than he is, and in the same regard, I understand where his weaknesses. At least I think I do. Now I got to show up, perform. I got to show up and take advantage of all those holes I see, or take advantage of making the holes that I want to see. But I feel very confident that I'm going to do that.
Mm-hmm. And let's say, win or lose, would you it's going to be October. So would you prefer to have another fight by the end of the year, or you're just going to hang back and see how it runs its course?
Hell yeah, I want another fight. I love fighting. You give me as many as possible. This last weekend, that 170er that knocked out Gerald Meerschaert, the Russian fella, that was the third fight in 66 days. If I could get 65 days, I would love to get three wins 65 days. I'm on that list. I've got 3 wins in 115 days, so I'm in the top 5 of the UFC wins. Yeah. But 115 is a long ways from 66, so I would love to shoot. I'll fight the next week. I'll already be in Abu Dhabi. I'll fight the next week. Try and get 2 wins in a week like he did.
There you go. And your thoughts on Khamzat? I think that's how you say his name. Chimaev, I think. What are your thoughts on him? Do you think the hype train's real, or do you feel he needs tougher opponents? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the hype train's real. Actually, he fought Gerald Meerschaert. I have spent 8 rounds in an octagon with Gerald Meerschaert, and Gerald's no pushover, and he got hit friggin' hard. Went down like a sack of potatoes. And I'm a fan of Meerschaert. It's a rough shot in the kisser, but this guy is scary. He's kind of like Johnny Walker, except I think with the chin. He's just smashing people. 2 people in 2 weeks. I think his first fight was like 8,000 punches to 2, just decimating people and making it look easy. So I will be interested in seeing him fight that next level fighter. I'd love to see him fight a top 5 guy, maybe start top 10 guy. But he's a fighter I'm definitely interested in watching.
Yeah, me as well. I wasn't totally convinced with his 2 fights, and he was already talking like, I want to get this guy and this guy, and I was like, I don't know. I slow your roll, but after him knocking on Mershar, I was like, holy shit! I've never seen someone dropped like that. I mean, I've seen
Yeah.
knockouts, but the way he just, and it was the right, like it wasn't just a, I don't feel like it was a lucky punch. He just got him in the right spot and he knew how to do it. And that's scary.
Yeah, it was. At first, I thought I must have got clipped, and then I watched the replays. Like, no, that was just a good punch. That was full face, caught him in. I mean, that was just a clean shot.
And I guess you kind of have to feel bad for Merchant because, great guy. But I mean, you're going to a fight where, your opponent is already double booked after, like, there's a fight booked after you. So it's almost like going through your mind. I think it's almost like, well, like as much as the press conference, they were talking about how they weren't disrespecting him and all that. But, to be able to fight someone and knowing that they already have a fight booked after you, that's almost like what are you guys trying to say here? And then to get knocked out viciously the way he did, that's gotta fuck up your mental game for sure.
Yeah, that would. Hopefully, he rebounds all right. I think
Yeah.
Mercer's been on a bit of a skid also, but I hope he rebounds well too.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want your thoughts on actually this weekend's card. Obviously, I know you train with Dominic Reyes, but to kind of start off, Izzy and Costa, man, like what are your thoughts on that fight?
I'm a big Izzy fan. I don't think he's quite as fast as Anderson Silva was, but he's got that same style. He's ahead of the curb. I mean, he sees stuff coming before it comes.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna side with him. But that being said, I am almost always wrong on my main event picks. I was right last week with Colby, but I'm almost always wrong with main event picks. But I'm picking Izzy. Co-main event, I'm taking Reyes. He's my teammate. He's my buddy. I know how hard he hits and how hard he works. So definitely taking Reyes. And then the other three fights on the card, I don't know any of them.
That's okay. I wasn't really going to ask you about them, but I think it's a weekend after. I mean, swear to God, there's a UFC event every fucking weekend.
Yeah, man.
But home in Aldina, I think she's the Mexican. I think. Thoughts on that fight?
I don't like betting on girl fights. I just never know.
Yeah.
They're all so talented, but they're all like equally talented. It's kind of who shows up that day. I guess home would be the smart money because she usually shows up. She's usually pretty good for something like that. But you never know. She's maybe she had a bad camp, or maybe it'll be a hard weight cut. But I don't have any money predictions on that one.
Okay. And I mean, obviously, you're fighting at UFC 254. So your thoughts on Khabib and Gaethje? I mean, that's quite the fight.
Oh, I like this fight so much more than Khabib versus Ferguson. I thought Khabib was just gonna roll through Ferguson. Khabib, I think he is the greatest lightweight of all time. I think he's just as good as there's ever been. That being said, I think Gaethje's gonna beat him. And some people, well, how can that be? I think if they were to fight the same 10 people, Khabib would beat all 10 and Gaethje would beat 8 of them. But I think stylistically, this could be a bad matchup for Khabib. Gaethje's got good wrestling that he never uses. Khabib is just an offensive wrestler with very little striking. Gaethje's going to have that high output. I don't think Khabib's going to be able to get the takedown every time. He'll get him down eventually, but I don't think he'll be able to hold him down. And I don't think Khabib's hands are going to be a threat at all for Gaethje.
Yeah, I mean Gaethje, he's in a lot of his fights he's been cracked, but I think the difference between his fight with Ferguson and some of his other fights where he just got clocked. I think the difference is Ferguson, if he learned to box a little bit more. Besides Ferguson, I think with a lot of his fights, he was coming in not as smart. I think he was just throwing haymakers and he was getting caught because the way he was wildly throwing. But I mean, the way he fought Ferguson, I think if he fights Ferguson the way he does with Khabib, it's going to be a long night. And the problem is with Khabib, he's shown that he's gotten clipped in a couple fights. So
I only remember one fight that he was really clipped in. That was the Michael Johnson one.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's the only one I remember him really getting hit. I know Ali Quinta hit him a little bit round 4, and Connor never touched him. but I've never Michael Johnson. That was the only one that I really remember him getting cracked.
Yeah, and it's we'll have to really see how that fight goes. I mean, I think it's a great fight. And then I think if Khabib does win, I think I can't. And I think he might take one more fight, but I don't. Besides Gaethje, I think he's the GOAT of the division.
Yeah. I am interested in the Michael Chandler coming in.
Yeah.
I am interested in that fight, Khabib versus him. But Chandler's never been tested in the UFC, so we'll see if his talent holds up here too.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see how he is. I know he would love to scrap. I love to see him and Gaethje too. I think that's a great matchup. And then him and Tony too. I think most of the divisions of the UFC are just so stacked right now. It's bananas. And that's what I love about the UFC and all these organizations now is that you're starting to see this evolution of fighters where you're not just having a BJJ specialist anymore. You're not having a boxer specialist coming in anymore. You're getting kids who have been training a fighting style since they're like 10 years old. And now that you have a lot of these kids coming in, they're already like very well-rounded. They have all these skills to be a champion. It's just determining who's going to be able to get to the top,
Yeah.
But I just kind of I was kind of getting off topic here. So I guess one more question for you: what's been the toughest opponent for you, and why?
Toughest opponent for me. Shoot, I don't know. I know one of my favorite fights I've had is against Nate Marquardt. He was my coach on the Ultimate Fighter, so I got to fight my coach in the UFC, and so that was very cool. He hit me harder than anyone's ever hit me in the UFC, and it was a great fight. I really liked that one. My first loss as a professional was to a guy named Caleb Nelson. That fight's probably the hardest one ever. It was for 15 minutes. We just beat each other up, and I ended up losing the decision. I puked at the end, and it was a rough fight.
No, did you puke because it was just the way the fight went, or you just eat something?
No, it was an exhausting fight. It was 15 minutes of him trying to take me down, me trying not to get taken down, and then me getting on top, and then him punching, and I was just exhausted.
Yeah.
Then I graduated college the next day.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah.
You got in a tough fight, but you graduated the next day. So I guess that's maybe more the reward. But Sam, thanks for taking your time to come on the podcast, man. I appreciate it.
It was my pleasure, sir. Thank you for having me on.
And good luck with your fight. Smiling Sam Alvey will be fighting at UFC 254 on October 25th.
Yes, sir. I'm looking forward to it.
All right, man. You take care, all right?
All right. We'll catch you later.
All right.